these days. You can do that. All right, so today I want to start by talking about the idea of being done. That moment when like everything in the to-do list, everything that you need to get done is complete. Everything is checked off, and just for the moment, you are just done. Anybody know what that's like? No? So here's the last time that I can remember it. I think maybe a few other times. Here's one of the clearest times in my memory. Freshman year of college, into the semester, I had all my papers, all the stuff, and I don't know how you did it in college. I would actually have a physical whiteboard, remember those, in my dorm room, and I would write all my assignments and all my tests and everything on there. And I had the last paper, crossed it off, and I walked across campus and I handed in that paper, and we had this big grassy, area in our campus. I turned it in the building, and I remember walking back across campus and just feeling like, this is what it feels like just to have like nothing to do. Like no one had no deadline, just feeling absolutely done. And here's why I bring that up. Today, we started last time during our live service. We're talking about the idea of having a Sabbath. In the Ten Commandments, God says he commands us to every 7 days have a day that we just take off, a day that we just do absolutely no work. And when all of your lists are done, it is easy to take a day off. And so that means that all of us have a choice that we need to regularly make. We will either take a Sabbath when everything is all done, when all the check marks are done, or we will make an intentional decision. We will make a declaration. We will make a line in the sand once a week where we say, turns out everything is not done. There's actually emails that still need to be responded to. There's chores that are not done yet. There is pressures that I have. There are deadlines that still need to be met. And I know that. But I have decided that for the next couple hours, for the next day, I am declaring that this is a day where I am going to do no work. That for the next little bit, I am going to prioritize what is actually most important in my life. I'm going to prioritize my mental health. I'm going to prioritize my physical health. I'm going to prioritize the relationships that I have in my life, my family, my spouse, my partner, my friends. I'm going to focus on my relationship with God, and I'm going to make that as a line. And we're going to talk about how we can do that, because God didn't just leave us with like hey, do this, good luck. He gives us an idea of how we are to do this. And it starts with two things we'll talk about today. It starts with us making a plan, and then it starts with us being able to say no and having boundaries. So we're going to start by looking at the idea of plan. So I printed the scriptures on your program so you can follow along with there. Also, there's some Bibles on your table, so you can turn to the page number if you want to look at a physical Bible. So there's a couple different times where God is letting the nation of Israel know. This is 4,000 years ago. This is 2,000 years before the time of Jesus. This is a very, very long time ago. This is a group of people that have just been led out of slavery in Egypt, and they're just trying to figure out, how do we live this new identity, this new way to live as followers of God? And this is what he tells them. He says, each morning, everyone gathered as much as they needed. So God had kind of installed this cool thing where every day they would wake up and just food was available. And in that day and age, that was their main job for the day. They didn't go in front of desks, they didn't have email. Their main job was just staying alive, which meant that our main goal for the day is making sure, do we have enough food? Do we have enough shelter? And so each morning, everyone gathered as much as they needed. And when the sun grew hot, it melted away. So the food went away. On the sixth day, they gathered twice as much for each person, and the leaders of the community came and reported this to Moses. And he said to them, this is what the Lord commands. Tomorrow is to be a day of Sabbath rest. Do nothing. A holy Sabbath to the Lord. So bake what you want to bake and boil what you need to boil. Save whatever is left and keep it until morning. So they saved it until morning, as Moses commanded, and it did not stink or get maggots in it, which is good. Eat it today, Moses said, because today is a Sabbath to the Lord. You will not find any of it on the ground today. 6 days you are to gather it, but on the seventh day, on the Sabbath, there will not be any. So this is their job, is they got to go out every single day and they have to gather food. And then God comes with this big command to say, all right, tomorrow I don't want you to gather any food, which they would have quickly raised their hand and said, that's going to be a problem. Because I was planning on eating tomorrow, and I was planning on my family eating, and we kind of need to eat tomorrow. So one way or another, we're going to have food. And if you just gather a lot of like extra food, this wasn't before refrigeration, you can't just like storehouse a bunch of food. It's going to go bad. It's going to get, and so God said, no. Here's what I want you to do. Tomorrow, I want you to go, and I want you to plan. I want you to pick up more than you would normally. I want you to pick up double. And that way, when you wake up tomorrow, everything is already done, and I'm going to take care of it. You're going to have to trust me that it's actually going to be still good. It's still going to be okay. So the first thing that we all need to get through our thick heads is that if we're going to take a day of Sabbath, it's going to take planning. It's not going to just happen. The idea that we're just going to like wake up and it's like, oh, I have all the things that I want to do. We talked last time that the idea of Sabbath is a day of fun. So what are you going to do that's going to be fun? It's a day of feasting. What are you going to eat? It's a day of rest. What are you going to do where I just don't have anything going on? It's a day of worship. That it's going to take some intentional planning to say, okay, if I'm going to have that day, I might need to do some grocery shopping to make sure that it's all set. If I'm going to make sure I have this day, I might need to, if I want to hang out with some folks, I might need to let them know. I might need to send some invites out, and that's going to take some planning. I might need to pre-prep some food. I might need to set an away message to my email to say, hey, just so you guys know, I'm not available tomorrow. Here's when I'm going to be back. You might need to let your team know. There's some planning that needs to go in to make sure that you can actually have the day of rest that God has given you. And that's what he said to them. But he goes on. It says, nevertheless, some of the people went out on the Sabbath day to gather it anyways. And I think that's so many of us. Is we have a day, it's like, okay, today's going to be my day off. This is going to be a day of rest. I've maybe even done some planning. But even still, we're just so in the routine and ingrained of I still got to work. And what I do, maybe you do, is I fall victim to the idea of just. Today's a day off. No, trust me, honey, we're going to hang out today. I just have to do these couple emails first. Today, hey, we're getting ready, we're going to go to the park. It's going to be great, but I just got these few chores I got to do around the house first. And they're going out, and they think, even though it's a day that God has given them for rest, they still feel like that I got to work, I got to go. So they went out on the seventh day to gather it, but they found none. Then the Lord said to Moses, how long will you refuse to keep my commandments and my instructions? Bear in mind, the Lord has given you the Sabbath. And we talked about that last time we were together. I love that idea that this isn't a God that's wagging his finger like, here's what I want you to do, and all these. God's like, here, I'm telling you, take a day off. I have designed you. I have created the world to work in this way where you can take a day off. Will you actually trust me and follow me to actually do it? So everyone is to stay where they are on the seventh day. No one is to go out. So the people finally rested on the seventh. And so we're going to make this very, very practical today. Next Sunday, actually, we'll call it all weekend. We'll make it pretty broad for you if you want. So any day you want to, next weekend, Saturday, Sunday, it's a holiday, Memorial Day weekend, Monday, we are declaring as a church, we want you to take a Sabbath. We want you to have a day that the whole point of the day is to do no normal work. It is a day where you are supposed to rest. It is a day where you are supposed to feast. It is a day where you are supposed to have fun, and it is a day where you are to worship. You can do it with a couple people. You can do it with a lot of people. You can do it with your family. You can do it with some friends. You can do it as a community group. We don't really care. We want this to be an all play, though. We want everyone who calls themselves a part of Christ Church Albany to say, kind of hell or high water, I am taking a day next week. And so I want you to first take a few minutes and kind of think about what you would want to do. So on your program, there's those listings there of fun, rest, feasting, worship, and ignore the no list. We'll get back to that in a second. And so take a few minutes and write, what would that look like for you? And think realistically, don't go, hog crazy. Like, I would go to Hawaii, I'd have a private jet. It's probably not going to happen. So what's realistic for next weekend? What would it look, what fun would you do? I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to watch the Indy 500 because it's the greatest race in the world and it's happening next Sunday. And it's fun for me to watch that. That might not be fun for you. You might like to fish. You might like to read. You might like to, fine. What is fun for you? Rest. I'm going to sleep in. I'm going to have a day where I just don't feel like I need to check my email. And that's so restful for me. What does rest look like for you? Feasting. Indy 500, they make these things at the track. They call it a track tenderloin. So it's a piece of pork tenderloin. They pound it out, and it's like this big, and they like make it into like this sandwich. So you have like a bun that's like this big and a piece of meat that's this big. And you try. So I'm going to make those. So that's what I'm going to do at my house to feast. And then worship. I will wake up early, as I often do, and I would spend some time quiet in my house with God. And one of my favorite things to do is when I'm at big things like that, or even watching something big like that on TV, and there's like 300,000 people at the Indy 500, which is cool, is I just think as I look through the crowd, God knows every single one of their names. God loves every single one of them. And it's just a moment for me just to reflect and worship. So take a moment. Dave, you can give us a little bit of background music. And I want you to write down, what would it look like for you? Go ahead and write that out.
People criticize so easily. A heartbeat at a time, they'll bring you down. It always seemed a little strange to me how the truth gets passed aside while the rumors pass around. I remember a story of a lady deceived her husband for another man. The crowd accused her, condemned her, oh, but Jesus just continued drawing patterns in the sand. Let the one that's never fallen throw the first stone. Let the one that's never fallen throw the first stone. Let the one that's never fallen throw. All
right, I see a few people still writing, a few people with their heads down, a lot of people eyes up. That's good. All right, so let's pick on somebody. Zach, give me one of yours. What's your fun? Fishing. So Zach wants to go fishing next week. What does Zach need to get ready? What planning does he need to do to make sure that he can do to get ready for that? Jared, what does he need to do? Wife's approval. Attaboy. Yeah, that's good. What else does Zach need to do in order to get ready for fishing? Worms? Yeah, if you're a worm guy, all right, that's good. Who has Charles? What are you going to eat? What's your feast? Well, give me one of your feast. What's one of the foods you're going to eat? Marilyn, what's he eating? Burgers on the grill? All right, that sounds good to me. All right, so burgers and salad. All right, this is easy. What do they need to prepare, to plan for if they're going to have burgers? What do they need? Come on, shout them out. What? Shopping, charcoal. Yeah, make sure all that stuff. I think one of the greatest things to me is like pre-preparing food stuff. One of like the most like tangible things for me is we wake up every morning and like the first thing we do is drink coffee. And so my coffee has an automatic coffee thing. Maybe some of you have that. Like to prepare and plan the day before. So I actually set that. So when I wake up, like the coffee is just ready. It's like, when it's like simple, easy of like, I don't have to do anything. I can just like start and sit and relax. And for all of you, there's things on your list that aren't just going to happen. They're going to take some planning. You need to have some conversations. You need to invite. There's some things that you need to do. And so your work, I think this is one of the big deals with the idea of Sabbath, is that it's not just going to happen. We're not just going to wake up on the seventh day and all of a sudden all of our food has arrived there. Is that it's work, it's effort on those other days that I am planning, I am working, I am making calls, I am doing this. And now one of the pushbacks that I would get for this when I talk about it is, well, you got to understand, John, like, I'm not like so much of a planner. Like, that's not, and in truth, some of you will need a much bigger plan to do a Sabbath to make you feel comfortable and actually rest and relax. Some of you can be a little bit more escape. But the idea is you're going to have to figure out a way to make some sort of a plan. The other pushback is my life is so crazy right now. Like, I can't even think about planning something else. And that might very well be true. But here's what I know about you, what I know about me, is you need this. You need a day, a regular day of fun and rest and feasting and worship. And so you might need to learn how to be a bit of a planner. You might need to find bandwidth to actually do this, which we'll talk about in a second, things you need to say no to. The pattern in which you're currently living, I'm guessing, is not working. Anxiety, burnout, everything else. So you're going to have to do things different than how you've done them before, which might be learning how to be a bit of a planner, learning how to make some of this time. And then next point that I want to make about Sabbath is you might say, okay, that all sounds nice. I like that idea. So I got my plan. I got, people are going to come over and I got some food, and I got the fishing stuffs all ready. But let me tell you how things work, John, is life. Life just happens. And I was all set, but then the boss called me and all of a sudden there's this deadline I didn't know about. There was these 7 emails that came in that I wasn't expecting. There's this extra chores, there's all this other stuff and I planned, I was hoping to do it, but there's this other stuff that came up. And all of us will have things that if we let it, will always come up and will always wreck our plan to be able to have Sabbath. And so what we have to do is not just make a plan, we have to have the ability to be disciplined about it, to have boundaries about it, so that when things come up, and they will, we say, no, I have made a decision. Now, quick show over here. How many of you are really good at saying no to things? Really good at boundaries, discipline? All right. So there's 3 of you guys. So talk to them, learn from them. The rest of us, we're going to need a little bit of help on this. And here's our example for this is with everything is Jesus. And if you're so many things, you don't understand, I can't say no based off of the responsibilities I have. We're going to look at a story. Jesus said no. Our Messiah, our King, the person who knew best what it was like to live humanity said no. And we can learn from him. So here's what it says. We are in Mark chapter 1. So that evening after sunset, the people brought to Jesus all the sick and the demon-possessed. The whole town gathered at the door, and Jesus healed many who had various diseases. He also drove out many demons, but he would not let the demons speak because they knew who he was. And so Jesus is busy. He's healing all these people. There's people waiting at the door for him. And that's how some of us feel. We just feel like we're so busy. We feel like the stuff that Jesus was doing, this isn't just random, I'm going to send some emails here. These people need me. They need help. And then one of the big pressures that Jesus felt that I think that maybe some of us feel is that this wasn't just an opportunity to help people, but this is a leverage point. Jesus, do you want to save the world or not? Do you want to be king of the world or not? You need to there's momentum here. You can't let this opportunity stop. If you heal all these people, then they might tell their friends, they might tell their friends. And some of you are looking at some sort of a phase of life. You're okay, I'm going to take a break. I'll do that rest thing at some point. But right now, I just have with what I have going on, as important as this is, if you understood my deadlines, then, oh, thanks, dude. Then you would give me a pass. But not Jesus. Jesus literally has people waiting to get demons out of them. And here's what Jesus does in that. It says, so very early in the morning, Jesus leaves the house. Very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up and left the house and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. And that was just a normal habit of Jesus. He's saying, I understand all you guys need something. I'm going to go away and I'm going to be by myself. And it's a little bit related to the idea of Sabbath. The idea is that we want Sabbath not just be even a day of the week at some point, but it's just like a whole way in which you're living. And for me personally, the habit that has changed my life the most over the last 2.5, 3 years with COVID has been this daily habit, started with emotionally healthy spirituality, emotionally healthy relationships, of waking up early in the morning. Maybe you're not a morning person, but taking time every day where I am just silent and quiet, and I start my days like that, and it changes the pace of everything. But Jesus is doing that. And then it says, Simon and his companions went to look for him. And when they found him, they exclaimed, everyone is looking for you. Like, what are you doing out here by yourself? Like, man, come on, Jesus, people need you. You got to get busy. Anybody watch the show The Middle? I don't even know if that show's on anymore. It was like the lady from, the mom from Everybody Loves Raymond and the janitor from Scrubs got married and they started a new family. So there's an episode in The Middle, I'll try to send the YouTube clip in an email, where the mom in the show, the Everybody Loves Raymond mom, she decides, I'm going to take a break. Everybody keeps telling me I need to take a break. And so she turns her cell phone off, which was an amazing tool, by the way. Turn your cell phones off every once in a while. And she goes into the bathroom of her workspace and she puts on some music and she lights a candle and she has this little 10 minutes of just relaxing and rest for her. And then all of a sudden she turns her phone back on. She's like, what could really happen in 10 minutes? And in 10 minutes, all of these messages came in and one of her kids had lit something on fire and it was just everything went wrong. And some of us, that's our worry. It's if I take a day off, if I go off and have a moment of silence, do you know how many emails I'll come back to? Do you know what my team, they can't function without me. I am so important. If you knew what, everyone is going to be looking for me. And that was the case for Jesus. And Jesus doesn't say that's not real. Jesus just says, I'm okay with that. I'm all right if I'm going to spend some time by myself. And even if everyone's looking for me, sorry, I'm busy right now. I'm taking this time by myself. And if Jesus had that permission, then you should give yourself that permission. That goes on. It says, Jesus replied, let us go somewhere else to the nearby villages. And so then Jesus, when they come back, it's all right, we're out of here. We're going to go. But all these people need you, Jesus. No, I got to go somewhere else. Which is an incredibly powerful lesson that all of us need to learn from Jesus as you look at Jesus' life. As Jesus, with all of his power, with all his supernatural ability, King, God, Jesus did not heal every person that needed to be healed. He didn't teach every lesson that needed to be taught. He didn't help everybody that needed to be helped. And a lot of us need to learn that permission, that it is okay for us to say no. Just because someone asks you to do something doesn't mean you need to say yes. Just because the pastor of the church that you're going to ask you, hey, can you serve? Can you be a part of this team? Doesn't mean you need to say yes. It's one of the things we've been trying to incorporate over the last 2 years is even doing less so that you just don't have to even say no as much because we're just giving bandwidth in life. Just because your boss asks you to do a new project doesn't mean you have to say yes. Just because there's another travel team that your kid could be involved in doesn't mean you have to say yes. Just because your neighbor invites you to something doesn't mean you have to say yes. You might want to say yes. You should say yes to some things, but you have the ability to be able, and you should regularly be in the practice of setting boundaries to say no. And again, there's a tension with that. Because the reason why we want to do all this stuff is because we feel like I need to do that to get ahead. And I think that's part of what Sabbath wants to break in us. I've told you guys the story before of my friend Jay. When I was in college, Jay was a few years older than me. He had just got married and had some kids. He was 4 or 5 years older than me. Had just started his career. Jay is brilliant. He's an engineer for Caterpillar. And pretty early on in his career, he was presented with an opportunity that's hey, you're an engineer, that's great, but we want to start moving you to upper management. And Jay looked around, and there was a lot of folks in our church that were in upper management at Caterpillar, and all of them were working like 60, 70 hours a week. They had to carry cell phones with them everywhere. They were constantly on call. They would go traveling all over the world and be away from their families. And Jay made a decision for him, might not have been the right decision for everybody, that you know what? I'm turning down the management track. And multiple times, he's older than me now, he's probably in his upper 40s. He's had so many opportunities over his career because he's brilliant. Hey, do you want to move up? Do you want to make more money? Do you want to, someday you could sit in this kind of an office? And he said, you know what? No, I'm just not interested. And I know you're offering it to me. I know it would be more money. I know it would be, but you know what? No. Because if I do that, it's going to take away from what I matter to most. And that's the last line. So that's the one I printed on your program because I had room in there. Is Jesus replied, let us go somewhere else to the nearby villages. And here's why. So I can preach there also, because that is why I have come. Jesus had a crystal clear idea of what his purpose in life was and what the main purpose of his life was not. Some of you in college or something else might have read the Stephen Covey book, Highly Effective Habits. And he talks about this dynamic that oftentimes there's all these competing things in our life, and there's things that are often urgent. Email, this person needs your help. They're urgent, but in the long term, they're not all that important. And then there's other things that are oftentimes not as urgent, but they are the most important. And what a lot of us do is we trade what is urgent and not important. And we trade for what is super important, but not as urgent, for what is urgent and not important. That we'll answer emails and you spend more time finishing this project and ignore our kids. That we'll spend all this time getting this extra little project and ignore our mental health, our physical health. That we'll go ahead and get a few more projects done in our house. Look how clean it is. We got all these things done, but we miss out on our relationship with God. And one of the things that God wants us to see in the idea of Sabbath is that he wants us to prioritize, to say, I have not come to answer a million emails. I have not come to rise the corporate ladder. I have not come to have the best looking house in the city of Albany. I have not come to meet all of my family demands. I am here for a better, bigger reason for that. I'm here to love God. I'm here to love people. I'm here to make a difference in the world. And I'm going to be okay with saying no to things that I need to say no to so that I can concentrate on what is most important in my life. And when you make those calls, it just changes everything. Someone I want to brag on. So we have these things called one-on-one relationships where we get together with just like one person and really share life. And he gave me permission to share his story. So one of the guys I'm in a one-on-one with is Brad. As you guys know, Brad Allen. Brilliant. Again, he's an engineer. I hang out with like brilliant engineers for some reason. They have pity on me, I guess. I'm not sure why. But he's a civil engineer, and if you know it's anything going on in the world right now, there's like all this money in government projects, and so there's projects all over the world right now that like want him and his company to be involved in it, and he could just literally be working constantly. He's just deadlines and projects. I mean, it's just crazy. But he made a decision a few weeks ago that I just thought was amazing. He had a Thursday, he had all these meetings, all these emails, but then someone offered him some Yankee tickets where he could go and take his daughter, and him and his daughter are big Yankees fans. And so he made a plan. He sent out an email saying, hey, I'm not available. This Thursday, sorry, I know you need me. I know all these things need to get done, but me having some fun and watching the Yankees, I don't know why that would be fun, but me having some fun and going to the game, and more importantly, me spending time with my daughter. And what I told Brad when he told me about that, I was like, 10 years from now, I bet you're not going to remember whether you're ahead or behind on whatever project that was. 10 years from now, I bet you won't remember what emails didn't get answered or not answered. But I guarantee you, Camden is going to remember that day that her dad said, work, you're more important than that. Me having fun, smiling, making a memory, that's more important than all this stuff. And she's going to remember that, and you're going to remember that. And Sabbath is a weekly time that we can make that decision. And then last thing, Monica, you can go ahead and come back up. which leads us into our time of communion. And we do this every single week as a reminder of so many things. But it's this idea of the grace of God. Because we've done an analogy before where we'll have like a pizza, or sometimes we've done like a pie, and we'll just kind of cut it up. Here's the amount of time that can go to work. Here's the amount of time that can go to my family. It's just, at the end of the day, none of us have enough time. None of us have enough energy to actually get done everything we need to get done. And so we have to make a decision. Therefore, I'm going to focus on these things, and there's always going to be a gap. We won't have enough time to spend time with our family. We won't have enough time to get done everything at work. We don't have enough ability to take care of our own sin. And so we're kind of faced with this thing. Do I trust that Jesus can do what I can't do on my own? Do I actually need to earn all of this? Or do I trust that Jesus is actually big enough on his own to actually take care of things that I don't see how I could possibly ever? If I take the day off, God, can you take care of that? When I look at all the failures I have and all my sin, I feel like I got to take care of all that myself, right? Do I actually trust that Jesus can take care of that? Does he have that much love, that much grace? So as you take communion today, just look at maybe your list of things that you want to do next week. The plan that you need to make, which is going to have a cost to it, is the God of heaven who loves you, who died for your sins. Does he have the ability to fill in all the rest that you can't do? And is he big enough for that? So let's take a few minutes as Monica plays to think about that and pray. And at any point during that, you can take communion.